Well, good evening, everyone. I hope you've had a great couple of weeks. I'm Laurie Labishak, your happiness ambassador, and I am the host here on Bright Spots. It is so good to be back. I took a hiatus last week, took a little vacation, took a week off, and I know I sure missed being here with you, and I hope you missed being here as well. So, what have you been up to, folks? It would be great to hear from you. As always, leave your comments below. And if you have a question for our guest, we would love to hear that question. Part of Bright Spots is the interactive part. So we want you to interact with our guest and our host. So please ask any questions that you would like. And if we can answer them, we will. And if we can't answer them right away, we will answer them later. So, Susan Panapucci, so glad that you are here. Glad to see you. And I'm sure we're going to have some great folks joining in. If it's your first time joining us here on Bright Spots, please let us know how you heard about us and where you're tuning in from. We want to know where you are from. Hi, Mary Beth. So good to see you. Glad you are here. Mary Beth actually recommended our guest this evening. So we are thrilled to have with us Tim Jarvis from the Jarvis Law Office. But we're going to get to him in just a minute. I want to talk to you just a little bit about the ocean. So as I mentioned, I went away for a few days. I flew down to Myrtle Beach. I think I told you on an earlier show that one of the pandemic positives was a very cheap flight to Myrtle Beach, $50 round trip. I mean, you just can't beat it, right? And my folks live just north of Myrtle Beach near Wilmington, North Carolina. So I took a few days off and went down to see my folks. How many of you are ocean people? How many of you like the ocean? I'd just love to know if you like the ocean. If you don't, a very cheap flight. Well, I don't know where that came from. So if you don't like the ocean, that's okay. So here's how I feel about the ocean. I love people. Hope Yolshinsky, good to see you. I just saw the Yolshinsky first. It's a family affair here today. This is great. So I love the ocean. I love to hear the waves. I don't mind the sun. I don't like the sand. I'm not a big fan of the sand, but I love to see the ocean. It is just so vast and beautiful, and it reminds me that the world is a bigger place. How many of you don't like the sand? I didn't even like a sandbox when I was a kid. You know, I don't like the feeling of it between my toes or on my hands and under my fingernails. It's just not my thing. But a lot of people love the beach. What I noticed this time around, and I'm sure it has to do with the pandemic and the fact that there were a lot of COVID cases down in the Myrtle Beach area at one point, like there were everywhere else, right? And it wasn't real busy. There were plenty of places to park, to pull into the public beach access areas. There was lots of places to walk up and see the beach. So I did get to see the beach for a brief moment, listen to the waves and smell that salty air. And it was just what I needed to refresh my soul. I will be honest, this is probably the first time in many years that I went away and totally unplugged. I didn't check email often. I didn't respond to a single email. I was online a little bit, but only to post beautiful pictures of my beautiful family and to keep folks up to date as to where I was and what I was doing. So someone recently said that I live a very public life because I'm out here on Facebook so much, and between my music and my marketing job, it's true. I'm out there in the public. But I do have a personal life that I keep personal, but I love sharing the highlights and the positive stuff. And that's what life's about, shining our light wherever we can. And that's my goal with Bright Spots. So without further ado, let's talk to our guest. We have this evening, as I mentioned, Tim Jarvis of the Jarvis Law Office. And the Jarvis Law offices are located in Lancaster, Dublin, and right here in St. Clairsville, Ohio. Their niche practice focuses in the areas of elder law, estate planning, and asset protection. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Bright Spots, Mr. Tim Jarvis. Hi,
Great.
Tim.
Thanks so much, Lori. Really happy to be here. This is my first Facebook Live presentation, so I am excited.
All right, so folks, you know the rules. If you have a question for Tim, please put them in the comments below, and we will try to get Tim to answer them for you. So, Tim, how long have you personally been practicing law, and what made you go into law?
Well, let's see. What day is it, Lori? I guess I've been practicing law coming up on 17 years now. And regarding what made me decide to want to do this, I didn't go to law school right out of college. I went to Ohio University down in Athens, got a business degree, and my first career was as a financial advisor. So I was a licensed stockbroker. I'm still a certified financial planner, and I really enjoyed doing that kind of work, helping people make sure that they were saving and investing the right way for their retirement or saving for a child's college education. So I did that for about 10 years. And like I said, I really enjoyed it. What happened to change my career path, so to speak, is my grandmother, who I was incredibly close with, she started to have some issues. Now, early on, what she was going through, myself and my family, we really didn't think much of it. We just thought, well, yeah, she's getting older. So her memory's not going to be as good as it used to be. And I think we were really just hoping that what we were seeing was not really, it wasn't really as bad as we were afraid it could be. And so we kind of deluded ourselves to some extent. And we didn't get involved as early as we probably should have. So long story, a little bit less long, she was ultimately diagnosed with dementia. And it was at that time that my family kind of tapped me and said, all right, Tim, you're the financial guy. You need to figure out what we should be doing in case her dementia gets to the point where she would need nursing home care. So at the time when I was told that was my job, I thought, sure, no problem. I'll do some research. I'll talk to the various professionals and we'll get this thing figured out, pretty quickly. Well, I was, to say I was naive was an understatement. After about 6 months of trying to research this whole long-term care maze, still had no idea what we should be doing with her planning. And I bet, Laura, I talked with at least half a dozen attorneys, and they were all nice enough, and I think they were genuinely wanting to be helpful. But each one I sat down with would kind of start our conversation by saying something like, well, this is not really the kind of work we do here. Not 100% sure how this whole thing works. And basically, they were telling me that they didn't know any more about it than I did. It was incredibly frustrating. In fact, I had all but given up, just concluding that, well, there is no solution to this. Unfortunately, one of my friends suggested that I go see an attorney that his family was friends with, kind of a friend of a friend. And quite frankly, I really didn't want to go see another attorney. Been a waste of time and money. But because it was a friend of a friend, I felt somewhat obligated. So I begrudgingly agreed to see one more attorney. And I'm incredibly thankful to my friend who really pushed me. It turns out this attorney was one of the very first elder law attorneys. Now, I didn't even know what an elder law attorney was. In fact, if you would have told me, hey, Tim, you need to see an elder law attorney, I would have assumed that meant an attorney who was a little bit older, maybe closer to retiring, because maybe they would know more than the younger attorneys. Fortunately, that's not what that means. His whole practice was all about helping folks set up their affairs so that if they did need nursing home care, they didn't have to run the risk of going broke because of it. So we hired the attorney, and he put a plan in place for my grandmother. And despite my family's best efforts at keeping her in her own home, unfortunately, the dementia did get to the point where we just couldn't do it any longer and make sure that she was safe. So we did have to transition her to a nursing home. And physically, she was very healthy. Mentally, she wasn't. After about 2 years of being in the nursing home, she didn't know who she was, let alone any of the family. In fact, I'll never forget the first time I went to visit her. And she looked at me square in the eye, had no idea who I was. In fact, if I think too long about it, I'll get choked up. And that was with my grandmother. I mean, I can't even imagine going through this with a spouse, someone you've been married to, your entire adult lives, and they no longer know who you are. I mean, I think it's got to be one of the cruelest diseases out there. So going through that process, Lori, is what made me decide that I wanted to help other families who are going through a similar situation. So I went to law school specifically to practice elder law.
Gotcha. So I would think that elder law is not widely practiced across the country. There's probably only a handful of you.
Yeah, you're spot on, Lori. One of our biggest issues is there's really not enough elder law attorneys out there today for all the people who really should be working with one. Now, the good news is it is one of the faster growing practice areas, but there's not a lot of us out there just yet. So yeah, you hit that nail right on the head on that one.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part about the work that you do, Tim?
Yeah, so I was really drawn into this again because of my grandmother's situation with her dementia. I mean, watching her just slip away before our very eyes, it's incredibly difficult. So I know how painful that can be. I also know how important the legal planning is to help those families who are dealing with that. So I would say the thing I'm most passionate about with what we do is working with families where there is a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is just one type of dementia. Being able to guide those families through this whole long-term care maze. They're probably going through one of the most difficult times of their lives, and often just like my experience was with my grandmother, I had no idea where to turn or who could help me with any of these things. And when it's your responsibility to make decisions for someone else, it is incredibly stressful, and you're constantly worried that you're not going to make the right decision. And if you don't, how is that going to impact your loved one? So I've felt those same worries and stress and anxiety dealing with my grandmother's situation, that helping families who are going through this themselves with a loved one. I mean, that's what gets me out of bed every morning.
So are you local? Did you grow up here, Tim? Where did you come from? How did you end up in St. Clairsville, Ohio?
Yeah. So I hesitate to mention this only because I don't want everyone to immediately log off when I tell everyone where I grew up. So
oh no, it wasn't Michigan, was it?
I grew up in the state to the north, the state that shall not be named. So, but that being said, we moved down when I was in high school. So I've now lived in Ohio longer than I ever lived in Michigan. But I grew up in the Upper Peninsula. In fact, when we moved down to, I jokingly say civilization, it took me a good 2 years to lose that heavy Canadian accent. And it's funny, if you asked me to do it right now, Lori, I couldn't do it to save my life. But if I get really tired, it just comes out. I can't even help it. But if you ask me to do it, I can't. But the old, I don't know if you remember back in the 80s, Bob and Doug McKenzie, I think is what their names were.
Yes.
They were really big for a while. That's the accent that I had.
Okay. See, and I'm a Southern girl, but I've lived in the North for almost 40 years now. And when my Southern drawl comes back, it's when I've spent time with my sisters who still live in the South and still have a Southern drawl, or my mom. So when I come back from visiting, or if I get off the phone, after talking to them for a long time, it comes out a little bit.
Does it?
Yeah, I guess it's just part of who you are.
Exactly. So how we ended up in St. Clairsville, you mentioned a couple of people who had joined us this evening. Mary Beth was one of them, and Hope was one of the others. Mary Beth and Hope are sisters. They grew up in the Valley. And so Hope started working with me, oh goodness, probably 15 years ago. And it's perhaps maybe not that unusual, but on our first date, I realized with her background, what it was at the time, and just the fact that she's such a wonderful person, I asked her to come work for me. And again, that was on our first date. And for whatever reason, she stuck around now for the last 15 years. And so anyway, when Hope's mom, who had been a social worker her entire career, for folks in long-term care settings, when Hope's mom found out what we do, she said, you know what, there's no one back here in the Valley who's doing this kind of work. So it was Hope's mom who suggested initially that we open an office in St. Clairsville. I wasn't really sure about it, quite frankly, and it was a fantastic move for us. It's been a really enjoyable experience being in St. Clairsville. In fact, out of the 3 office locations, I probably shouldn't say this because I know there's other people who are joining us tonight, but St. Clairsville office has a real special place in my heart. It might sound strange, but the people are just different. I mean, I just like them better. I don't know if it's because it's more of a rural area. And since I grew up in such a small town, that maybe I just relate to folks who also are more rural. I mean, I like the other offices too, but St. Clairsville, like I said, holds a special place in my heart.
Now, do you make your home in St. Clairsville as well?
Not yet. My youngest child graduated from high school 2 years ago. And so I needed to stay in Central Ohio until the kids were, grown and out of the house, so to speak. But we're debating where we want to, buy the next home, and St. Clairsville is definitely in the running.
Awesome. That's awesome. So Tim, I have your website queued up so that we can talk a little bit about it if folks are looking for information. So what are some of the things that set you apart from other law offices? I mean, I know that you do elder law, but are there things that set you apart from other elder law offices?
Yeah, and again, there's not a lot of them out there, not yet anyway. And I think that the majority of us who do practice in this area, at least the other ones that I know and interact with, I think the one commonality that most of us share is that we got into it for a similar reason. We had a family member who needed this kind of help. We didn't know where to turn, and we either figured it out ourselves, or we like in my situation, I was exposed to this through a very good attorney. And because of that family situation, that's why most of us are involved with this. I'd like to say I was smart enough just to look at the demographics in this country and say, hey, we're all getting older. This is going to be a really important practice area. Unfortunately, I wasn't that smart. Again, it was all because of my grandmother that I got exposed to this. And that's, again, how I got into it. But one of the things that I truly feel does make us different is it's not just the legal planning that we address in my firm. I like to tell folks that about 60% of what we do is more social work related than legal planning. But just helping families, make those really difficult decisions. At what point does someone need to look at receiving care outside of their own home? And what kind of care environment would be appropriate? If you've never been through this with a family member, or you don't work in this field, I mean, it's overwhelming to put it mildly. So just having a resource who can walk a family through all their options, the things that maybe they're not even considering. So it's not just the legal work. If it was just the legal, quite frankly, I wouldn't enjoy it as much as I do.
So why don't we walk through some of the things that you can do to help folks? I come into your office and my mom is getting up there in years, and She's concerned about her assets. She's concerned about, leaving things to her kids. I often, as I told you off the air, I grew up in elder care myself. I worked for over 25 years. I actually worked for with Mary Beth's mom at one point in my career. So I too grew up in the elder care business, and Alzheimer's and dementia is something that's very near and dear to my heart. So a lot of times what you hear is, I don't want the state to get everything. I want things to go to my kids, or I want to make sure that I protect my assets. So if you hear that from someone, what does that conversation feel like? How does that go, Tim?
Yeah, so several things that come up with that conversation. The first one oftentimes is someone will come in and either let us know that they've already transferred some of their assets into their kids' names to prevent losing the assets to a future nursing home stay, or they'll say that they're seriously considering doing that. And that's one of the biggest mistakes someone can make, in my opinion. You can get yourself into a whole lot more hot water by transferring the assets to the kids' names than what the nursing home or long-term care could ever do to you. But most folks don't know what the alternatives look like. So the reason why I said that I think transferring assets to the kids for safekeeping is a big mistake is, if something bad happens to the kids, then oftentimes it's mom and dad left holding the bag, so to speak. So let's say we've got mom and dad, and they don't want to lose everything to a future long-term care scenario. So they transfer everything into their son's name, just as an example, including their home. Well, what happens if, let's say that the son is riding to work one morning, maybe he's running a little bit late, he's going faster than he should be, gets into an accident, which would not be that strange of a situation. So he gets into an accident, and let's say it's his fault. And God forbid somebody is hurt badly or even worse. Well, what's going to happen. He's going to get sued. And if it was his fault, he's going to lose that lawsuit. So the only real issue is, what is the judgment going to be against him? Meaning, how much does he owe this party that he injured? Well, if that person was hurt badly or worse, could be looking at $1 million. That would not be out of the question. Well, the obvious reply when I explain that to someone, they'll tell me, yeah, but Tim, my son has car insurance, which I expect that to be the case. What most folks don't realize is that car insurance, that doesn't cover an unlimited amount. Most of us have that. The insurance is $300,000 per accident. Well, if the judgment is $1 million and his car insurance covers $300,000, well, unless he's got another $700,000 of his own assets to pay off this judgment, mom and dad just lost everything they put into his name for safekeeping. And that's not the only example. I mean, we could talk for the rest of our time together about all the things that can go wrong with that. Divorces, bankruptcies. If God forbid something happens to that child, kids aren't supposed to pass away before their parents do, but sometimes that happens. So if any of those things would happen, again, it's mom and dad who are left holding the bag, so to speak, in that they may have just lost all their assets. In addition to the risk of something bad happening to the kids, there can be some pretty significant tax issues involved with making those gifts as well. Gift tax issues, capital gains tax issues. So it's very rare that I'll sit down with a family, and transferring the assets to the kids is actually the best thing for them to do. Usually that's potentially opening up a huge can of worms that there's no reason to have to open. There's much better ways to protect the assets. The other part of that conversation, Lori, that we always have to address, or at least be aware of and make the determination ourselves, is, and this doesn't happen very often, but once in a blue moon, we'll have the kids come in and talk to us first mom or dad are not part of the conversation. So in that scenario, we always have to make sure that the kids' intentions are where they should be, so that they're understanding that the planning is to benefit mom and dad, and the money is going to be there for mom and dad for the rest of their lives. And it's only after the second parent passes away that money can be made available to the kids. Now, again, the vast majority of families we sit down with, that's not an issue. But as the attorney, I always have to make sure that someone's not trying to use this situation as a way to get their hands on their parents' money, which is another reason why I don't recommend just putting your assets in the kids' names. So you have absolutely no control over it. And even if the kids would never do anything, nefarious or anything they shouldn't do, when you throw in the in-laws into that mix, sometimes things don't go exactly as planned.
Right. So, Tim, there's a statement on your website that says elder law is more than just saving estate taxes. So, in a nutshell, tell us what elder law is if it's not just saving on estate taxes.
Yeah, and that's something we hear all the time, Lori, is people will come in and no fault of their own, but they're not aware of perhaps what the bigger issues are, where the bigger risks are, and so they know that taxes could be an issue, and obviously none of us want to pay more than we have to in taxes, but they don't necessarily know that, hey, you can also help protect what I have from a future nursing home stay. You can also help protect the inheritance for our kids. So once they receive it, no one can ever take that away from them. So again, divorces, bankruptcies, lawsuits. We can make sure that nothing ever goes through the probate process. So ultimately, what it comes down to with elder law, it's not defined so much by the legal work we're doing necessarily, but rather it's defined by the clients that we're working with, which, as the name implies, typically are folks on the young end. Typically about 50 years old is when we start working with these folks. Although I've had a client who was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. He was in his mid 40s. And then my oldest client, the record so far is 105. So that's kind of the range there as far as who we're working with. But what it comes down to is just making sure that that person's wishes are going to be honored. And that includes everything from who the backup decision makers should be if they can't serve in that role themselves, who their stuff should go to after they've passed away, if they do need long-term care, trying to help identify the best care environment for them, which obviously we'd all prefer to be in our own home. So if we can help a client do that, to make sure that they can receive care in their own home if it's needed, so that they never have to go to a facility of any sort. I mean, that's when we can make that happen, that's pretty much the best possible end result. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So we need to make sure that they don't run the risk of losing everything if they do need care outside of the home.
Absolutely. Folks, if you're just tuning in, this is Bright Spots, and our guest this evening is Timothy Jarvis with the Jarvis Law Offices located in Dublin, Lancaster, and St. Clairsville, Ohio. If you have questions for Tim or myself, please put them in the comments below and let us know you're here. Let us know that you are watching. Now, Tim, Wendy Anderson of the St. Clairsville Chamber has mentioned that you have workshops and that they are very informational and much needed. Tell us a little bit about the workshops that you offer and why you offer those.
Sure. And with the pandemic, we've had to switch gears to some extent, Lori. We used to do in-person workshops on a regular basis. But obviously, once the pandemic hit, we couldn't do those any longer. So you and I were talking a little bit ahead of time, Laurie, about having to get comfortable with these online platforms. And so we've been doing a lot of meetings online. When the pandemic first hit, and the governor issued the shutdown order in Ohio, we were classified, well, all law firms were classified as an essential business. Wasn't just us. So we were still allowed to be open, but no one wanted to come in. And we actually sent our staff, had them work from home for the first couple months. They've since come back, most of them. So right now, most of our clients are still a little bit leery about leaving the home and getting out in the public. So we're still doing a lot of those online meetings. But more and more, it seems like every week, more and more of our clients are comfortable coming into the office. And I always prefer to do things face to face. That's just kind of how I'm wired, and I think my clients feel the same way by and large. So we've all kind of had to transition, whether we wanted to or not. So we do our workshops now all online, and if anyone's interested in that, simply call my firm and we can give you the dates that are coming up. I'm sure, Lori, we have that in an email somewhere, but they don't let me be in charge of those kinds of things. And I'm sure Mary Beth is laughing now because she knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, so Mary Beth, if you know those dates, maybe you could send us a comment. We can put them on the screen so folks know when those things are coming up. That would be just great.
Yeah. And the reason we do those, Lori, just so I don't miss that part of your question,
sure.
We find a lot of people are just kind of overwhelmed when they're thinking about how to plan for their future. They obviously don't want to make any mistakes, and they're a little apprehensive, and I don't blame them. When I was going through this with my grandmother, the last thing I wanted to do was go see another attorney. So I understand the hesitancy, but what we find is if people, just attend one of our workshops, they see that, we're not horrible people. We're not, I think you can get a sense for someone, especially in person, get a sense that, we're not going to try to take advantage of them. We're not going to talk over their heads using legal mumbo jumbo and purposely confuse them. So we try to make things as easy to understand as possible without getting into the minutia of it all. Attorneys love minutia. I love minutia, but my clients hate it. So I have to do my best to make sure that I don't get lost in the weeds with the legal explanations. But so far, that hasn't been a problem, fortunately. That's one of the more common bits of feedback we get from our workshops is, hey, you made this so easy to understand. We didn't think it was going to be anything like this.
That's awesome. So Jeanette Garavix has asked, what's the best contact number and person to set an initial appointment? And we do have the number for the St. Clairsville office on the screen. Is there an individual that they should ask to speak with?
No, anyone that they would talk to at my office will be able to give them that information. And if they want to come in and talk with us, anyone who answers the phone is capable of setting up those appointments. And just as a thank you to you, Lori, for inviting us, any of your listeners or viewers today, if they are interested in even just coming in and asking questions, be happy to do that. And as a thank you, Lori, we'll waive the consultation fee. It won't cost them a dime.
Well, there you go, folks. Thank you, Tim. That's very generous of you.
Thank you.
So I had a question before you said that, and then it just blew out of my brain. I'm overwhelmed by your generosity. That's just great. So as folks are navigating through the dementia and the nursing home, what's some of the advice that you give people before they reach that point? As say someone, I'm getting close to 60, I have 2 grown children. What are some of the things that you tell folks to start doing early to get ready before you have to go to a nursing home? Now, my parents are almost 80, both still in very good health. should I have a will? Should I look at a durable medical power of attorney, a power of attorney? What are a living will? What are some of the things that folks my age or younger should be looking at?
Sure. So at a bare minimum, the documents I recommend that everyone should have, everyone who's 18 years or older, would be a will, a financial power of attorney, a healthcare power of attorney, and possibly, depending on what your wishes are regarding end of life care, possibly a living will. Now, I think everyone understands what the will is. There's really no secrets with that one. The power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, which this is also referred to as a durable power of attorney. It's the same thing. This is where you're naming at least one other person. You're giving them the legal authority to be able to manage any of your affairs for you, so that if you can't manage your affairs yourself for whatever reason, a stroke or dementia or what have you, the person that you've named, your decision maker in the power of attorney document, they just step in your shoes and take over. Without that document in place, if someone is no longer competent illegally, meaning they can't manage their own affairs, without that power of attorney in place, our only option is to petition the probate court for a guardianship. Now, I wouldn't wish that process on anyone. In my mind, anytime you're in the court system, it means someone made a mistake somewhere along the lines. And nothing against the courts. I mean, they do the best job they can. But the family should be the one making those decisions, not a court. Plus, it can be a timely process, or it takes a lot of time, rather, and it can be expensive. So having that financial power of attorney in place would bypass the need in most cases for that guardianship. Healthcare power of attorney document, similar sort of idea, but as the name implies, limited to healthcare decisions. So if you can't tell the doctors yourself what you want them to do for you, then your healthcare power of attorney, the person you've named in that document, they step in and they're legally able to tell the doctors, what to do for you. And then the last document I mentioned, the living will, that's not something everyone necessarily wants. Basically, the living will, in a nutshell, says that you wouldn't want to be kept alive artificially, on the life support machines, if there's no real chance or no real hope you're going to get better. So for lack of a better term, this is the pull the plug document. Now, if that's not the way you feel about that issue, that's fine. There's no right or wrong answers with any of this. You just wouldn't want the living will if that's not how you felt about that issue. Now, with the will itself, the one thing I really want to mention, because we see people make mistakes with this all the time, what a lot of folks don't realize is if the will controls who gets what after you're gone, that by definition is the probate process. I think most of us have heard about probate, and we've been told that you want to bypass this like the plague. And I personally agree with that. But a lot of people misunderstand what it actually takes to bypass that process. And the two biggest reasons why you don't ever want to have to put your family through this process, the probate, one, it takes a lot of time. Here in Ohio, on average, from start to finish, we're looking at anywhere from 8 to 12 months. Now, that's not even the worst of it. In my mind, that the single biggest reason why you don't want to put your family through this, the cost. Probate, in most cases, is going to be the most expensive way to handle your affairs by far. In fact, usually nothing else even comes in at a close second. So the average fee to get through probate, once you've paid everyone who's involved with this, here in Ohio, anywhere from 5 to 7% of everything you own. There's no estate plan I could dream up, unless I'm really, really creative, that would be more expensive than going through probate. Now, what most folks don't understand with this is that the lion's share of that money that's involved with this process, that's not going to the court. It's not going to the state of Ohio. It's going to the attorney who's handling the estate for your family. Well, that kind of creates I'm not even going to say kind of, that's a potential conflict of interest. If probate is incredibly costly, which it is, and if the lion's share of that money goes to the attorney who's handling the estate, which it does, Well, what that means, if the attorney is really more interested in making as much money as they can personally and not as concerned about what's best for their client, well, then they set up all their clients to have to go through this process. And there are many, many ways that you can bypass probate. In fact, here in Ohio, I don't think there's any asset that you can possibly own that can't be set up to bypass probate automatically, when you pass away. So if you're not sure that you've got everything set up to bypass this process, you really want to talk to someone who can walk you through how to do that. And like I said, there's many, many different ways that you can use to bypass probate. The most important factor is just make sure you do this, unless you want to pay your attorney a whole lot more than what's necessary.
All right. So folks, if you're just tuning in, this is Bright Spots, a weekly show highlighting individuals who are making a difference in their community. And tonight, our guest is Tim Jarvis of the Jarvis Law Offices located in Lancaster, Dublin, and St. Clairsville, Ohio. If you have questions, please put them in the comments below. And Mary Beth Panapucci did let us know that all of the workshops are on the Facebook page. So look up Jarvis Law Firm on Facebook, or you can send an email to wecare@jarvisfirm.com, and they can email a link for the workshops. And Tim, the workshops are absolutely free. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, folks. So there you have it. And Tim has also offered anyone who is interested and is watching this show, if you give them a call, they will waive a consultation fee if you'd like to come in and talk with them about getting things in order for you or your family.
Yeah. And if someone is interested in that, if they call, just let my staff know that you watched the Facebook presentation, and they'll go ahead and indicate that we're waiving the consultation fee.
All right, awesome. So Tim, one of the other statements on your website is, have all of your options laid out for you in plain English. What do you mean by that statement?
So what we find, Laurie, and this happens, I think more oftentimes than not, is someone will come in to sit down with us, and they'll share with us that they went to see another attorney and really didn't understand much of what the attorney was saying. They used legal mumbo jumbo, for lack of a better term, and I think this is done on purpose a lot of times, because the attorney thinks that, well, I can maybe sell them something they don't necessarily need, as long as I confuse them to the point where they don't know one option from the next. And having gone through this with my grandmother, I mean, the attorney we worked with when we finally found the right one, he was fantastic. He just made everything so easy to understand. And it was so much less stressful than what we thought it was going to be. I had this image in my mind how horrible the meeting was going to be. I thought it was a necessary evil. And it was the exact opposite. I'm not going to say that I would choose to go see an attorney in my spare time just for fun. But the experience was so much better than we had envisioned, what we thought it was going to look like. And so just having been through that and just appreciating the fact that he made an extra effort to make sure we understood all the options. He didn't use mumbo jumbo. That I decided when I started practicing that I was going to do the same thing, that I was going to take every measure I could to make sure that when the families that we're sitting down with, when they walk out of the office, that they're not more confused than when they walked in. So again, having been through this myself, I think it gives me maybe a little bit more empathy for what these families are going through with their loved ones, because I've been on their side of the table, I've been in their shoes, and I know how difficult it was. So the mission of the firm is just to help those families navigate this whole long-term care maze and make it as easy on them as we possibly can.
Do you find that that's one of the main questions people ask is about long-term care? What happens when I get to long-term care? How is this going to affect my family? Does that seem to be the biggest concern, or is there something else that people are concerned about?
Yeah, so it's interesting, Lori. That's not what they come in telling us, because they oftentimes they don't know that an attorney can help them with this kind of issue. So that they'll come in and they'll ask about a will, or they'll ask about putting their assets in the kids' names, and they don't often start out telling us why they're considering that. I mean, we've been doing this long enough. We have a pretty good idea, but no, they don't come in saying that they're concerned about long-term care. They come in saying the issues they've heard before. They need a will. They don't want to go through probate potentially. They want to. I think the one thing they all tell us is they want to save money in taxes. And ironically enough, most of those clients never have to worry about taxes, estate taxes. But that's what we've all heard is a potential threat looming out there is estate taxes. The threshold is so high that most of us don't have to worry about it. It's over $11 million per person.
I'm just going to slide by then.
I know we were talking earlier. I don't know. You might be over that by now. Yeah, I don't have to worry about that either myself.
Oh, goodness. So one of the other comments, and I love your website, by the way, folks, if you want to go visit the website, it really does have a lot of information on it. And it is jarvisfirm.com. You can cruise around in there. There are some videos of the workshops, just some really good information. So this comment is control your property while you are alive and able. What do you mean by that?
So it's what we're trying to get at there, Lori, is a couple different things. One is, first of all, make the decision as far as what you want to see happen to your property after you're gone. And then once that decision is made, let's get together and we'll walk you through the various options as far as how to guarantee that those assets do go to the people you want them to go to as efficiently as possible, while at the same time either eliminating or reducing as much as we can any taxes, any court costs, any legal fees, including attorney's fees. So we're going to walk them through how to do that, the various options, and tell them what's the best way to do it. And then if there is a concern that they have about future long-term care issues, then we'll walk them through the various options as far as how they can set up their affairs so that they don't run the risk of losing everything to a nursing home or any other sort of long-term care environment. And that's what we're kind of getting at with that particular issue. The one other thing I'll mention kind of in that context, Lori, is, and this is something I talk about in every workshop, it has to do with the length of time that an average inheritance lasts. So getting into the realm of protecting, controlling your property. There was a study done several years ago by one of the big mutual fund companies, and what they were trying to figure out was how long does an inheritance last on average? To put that in other words, how long does it take the kids to spend through their inheritance? This was a multi-year study. They tracked all sizes of accounts, and I think most of our viewers will be somewhat shocked when I share with you what this study determined to be the average length of time takes the kids to completely spend through their inheritance. When we're doing this in person, I usually ask the audience, take a guess. And the guesses I usually get are anywhere from 3 years to 20 years. Well, according to this study, the real length of time it takes the kids to spend through everything, 73 days. So, yeah. So that is when we're doing these in person, I can just see people's jaws drop to the floor. And my point with all this is we can set up the inheritance in a way that the beneficiaries can't spend the money that quickly. My kids are still pretty young, but I have no doubt that if I'm not here tomorrow and they get whatever they're going to get with no strings attached, 73 days would seem like a lifetime to them. And they're wonderful kids. They're young. They're not, haven't learned those hard life lessons yet. And I don't want them learning that with my money. They need to learn those lessons with their own money. But unfortunately, that issue is not limited to young beneficiaries. We've had many, more than I would care to count, many of the adult children of our clients who are in their 40s or even early 50s. They get their inheritance, from their folks, my client, and then I see what they do with it. And it's not just limited to the 18 to 25-year-olds. So again, we can help families build in what we call speed bumps to slow the kids down with the spending. And the rules don't have to be the same for each beneficiary. That's the one thing that I pretty much hear from every family we have this conversation with is, well, I need to treat my kids fairly. And I understand that, but what I tell them is fair doesn't necessarily mean the same. I mean, they don't have the same strengths and weaknesses. To me, fair means doing what's right for each individual beneficiary, given their individual strengths and weaknesses. But if you have 4 kids and 3 of them have saved every last dime they've ever received, and one can't save a dime to save their life, why would you treat them the same? You shouldn't. So my point with that is, you don't have to treat all the beneficiaries the same way. We can tailor this for each individual beneficiary.
So one of the comments that really struck a nerve with me was this one. Give what you have to whom you want, the way you want, and when you want. So often I tell my mother and my mother-in-law and my grandmother when she was alive, if there's something you want the kids to have, or there's something you want one of us to have, give it to us for Christmas. Don't go spend money on something else. If you've got something precious you want us to have, or something memorable, give it so that you can enjoy seeing them have it, I guess. Is that what you mean by this statement? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
That definitely is. It's part of it. From a bigger picture standpoint, just identifying what you want to go to which individual. Now, that being said, most of my clients will tell me, I'm just going to let the kids fight it out. And they're perfectly serious. That's what they are expecting is going to happen. And I can talk to them till I'm blue in the face that there might be better ways to do it. And a certain percentage of them, that they want the kids to fight it out. Fortunately, that's not the majority of the families we talk with. So it's part of this statement is also making sure that no one's going to have any grounds to contest anything. And if they do, if one of the beneficiaries files suit in court claiming that they should get this, that, or the other thing, and that decision has already been made, they would get a warning first, but if they continue with the lawsuit, they're written out automatically. So this will put an end to any of that, that infighting, pretty darn quickly. But it's something we have to add to the plan prior to something, happening to you. We can't add it in after the fact. So that statement is really just more big picture. Let's figure out who you want to receive what, and then let's make sure that actually gets done in a way that's not going to cost you a fortune in legal fees or court costs. And then with some of the individual items like you were referring to, Lori, I agree with you. If you've got a basement full of stuff that, quite frankly, you're not enjoying, whether the kids want them or you get rid of them, you're going to be doing the kids a huge favor by not making them go through 50 years worth of junk. and I use that term, affectionately, the junk. But when the kids have to do that, it's not easy. It's not enjoyable. And a lot of my clients, who grew up in that generation, they save everything. I mean, I've got clients who've saved every check they've ever written for the last 50 years.
I'm married to one of those people.
What that means, though, is when that person passes away, their kids, if they have kids, if not someone else, has to go through all of that.
Right.
Because if mom or dad saved it, there had to have been a reason why they saved it. Well, usually there's no good reason. So if any of you are more on the pack rat side, the one piece of advice I would give you is, please try to at least reduce some of the stuff so the kids don't have to do it, or maybe ask them to help you so you guys can do it together. But I can guarantee you that they'll definitely appreciate any effort you make along those lines. And I know Mary Beth is hoping that her folks were listening in right now.
It's interesting. As I mentioned to you off camera, my dad was in the Marine Corps, and we moved a lot when I was younger. And when the military moved you can only take so many pounds of things. They only move so much. So my mom and my dad did not keep a lot of stuff. There was not a lot of paper, and they still don't to this day. They're definitely not of that mindset. If it's got a purpose, they use it. If it doesn't, they pass it on. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, has lived in the same home for a very long time. She grew up in this area. My husband, grew up in the same house that his mom lives in now. And they save everything, So I'm, there's pictures the kids made me when we were younger. Yes, they're beautiful and they have lots of memories. Honest to goodness, I would probably throw them away, but my husband still puts them on the fridge. So, and our kids are 30 and 32. I'm sorry, 32 and 34. Lord have mercy. Anyways, so it's crazy when you think about the differences in people, because some people do keep a lot of stuff and some, and I agree with you. It's tough to go through stuff after someone's gone.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I try not to go over an hour for my guests and for my viewers, but I saw that Trudy Wilson joined us, and Trudy is the manager at Primetime Senior Services. And I know that if she was feeling like asking, she would. So I'm going to ask for her. Do you take your workshops on the road? Primetime Senior Center is the local area agency on aging senior center in Jefferson County. And when they are at full capacity and operating, they have over 2,500 members. They've been shut down because of COVID, of course, and now doing some construction. So probably not opening until closer to Christmas. But in the future, is that something you do on the road, or how does that work?
Yeah, Primetime has been a fantastic partner for us.
Good.
We've done many presentations in their facility, which is fantastic. The
Fabulous
facility that they have there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, good to know. I'm sure that Trudy will be in touch to get something set up.
Yes. So, and I can't wait, Lori, for when we can get back to doing presentations in person. Yes. I really, really miss doing them.
Yeah, I'm anxious to get back out there as well. So I totally understand it. So Tim, it has been such a delight to have you on this evening. And do you have anything else that we haven't touched on? The hour certainly went quick for me. I hope it did for you as well. But I don't want to miss anything. So is there anything that we haven't covered that you really want folks to know?
The one thing I'll mention just briefly is with the planning that can be done to allow someone to protect what they have from a future long-term care scenario. I think most people have heard about the look-back period with Medicaid. So Medicaid's a program that would pay for someone's nursing home care if that person qualifies financially. So the look-back period currently is 5 years. Now, all that means is when you apply for Medicaid, the state's going to look backwards 5 years, see if you've transferred any of your assets out of your name. And if you have, there'll be a period of time where you're not eligible for Medicaid. So 2 points with that. One, the sooner you get started and get that 5-year clock ticking, the more likely the odds are that we're going to get a much better end result. And secondly, that look back period could very well be changing in the not too distant future. Rumors I'm hearing, we could be looking at anywhere from a 7 to 10 year look back again, down the road, not too far. Now, the good news is anytime the government changes a law, they're not allowed to make it effective retroactively. The Constitution says they can't do it. What that means is once someone has done their planning, they're grandfathered in. So my point in saying that is we do have a window of opportunity here, but it's closing. I just can't tell you when it's going to slam shut. So rather than waiting until we see whatever the new law is and being stuck with that, I can tell you it's going to be a whole lot better if someone looks into this now under the current 5-year system.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, folks, if you'd like more information, visit jarvisfirm.com. And Tim, thank you so much for being my guest this evening. It has been a real pleasure.
I've really enjoyed talking with you, Lori. Thank you so much.
If there's ever anything we can do for you to help promote what is going on with Jarvis Law, please let me know. Happy to do that. Would love to have Mary Beth come on and talk about what she's doing out in the community as well. So absolutely enjoyed this evening. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that Jarvis Law is the recipient of these wonderful awards and, acknowledgments. So they truly are a firm that you can trust. So I encourage you to reach out to them. And again, Tim has graciously offered that the consultation fee be waived. Should you call the office, just let them know that you saw the Facebook Live on Bright Spots. Folks, I'm Laurie Labishak, your happiness ambassador. Join me next week. Dr. Roberta Shaler is our guest, and she is the relationship health doctor all the way from California tuning in. So please be sure and come back next week, 7 o'clock, right here on Bright Spots. Remember to shine your light. God bless you all. See you soon.